I'm the best at what I do because I know what I do. My value is me in the room with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I've come to learn. If you buy a program from me, an online program, I don't know. Is it going to be good? I hope so. I know people in my field who I buy programs from who are brilliant because I know that. I'm not one of those guys. Me, what I do is you want me in the room with you. I want to look at everything that you do. I want to watch, I want to learn about you. I want to create a relationship with you. That's my value.
Mark Fitzgerald, welcome to VALDCAST.
Great to be here.
For sure. So we're at VALDCon X. It's our second VALDCon X in 2 weeks. We had LA last week. We've got Dallas this week. It's actually happening behind us here at Elite Performance Training in Frisco, Texas. How's it been so far?
You know, it's one of those things. I think the conference landscape is changing quite a bit. I think in a good way. I think if for a little while there, it was kind of just a little same old.
Mm-hmm.
I really like what Vald is doing, what you guys are doing in terms of, so much of our field now is like that tech integration, and it is tech integration, and it's, to learn more about that as young coaches, as older coaches, as, anywhere in between is so valuable. And I think it's, I really like how you guys are putting them together and like who you have talking here. It's like, Cohen and, these guys that are just, and women as well, obviously, that are just like hands in it and like in it every day, which is what I love. I don't necessarily enjoy going to events like this that don't have people who are in it, in the trenches every day. And like, to me, that's who I want to learn from. And like you guys, like even the gentleman speaking right now, like just that first half of his talk was just like, he nailed it. And he's, first year NFL guy, and he sounds like a 10-year NHL guy or NFL guy, right? So that's it's pretty neat.
For sure. That's Braylon from the Cowboys. Yeah, he was on the show just before you too, so that's awesome. Cool. Right, well, I want to jump into, like, for you, it's a bit different because you've been in the industry for 2 decades plus and you've seen a lot of change. You've been at multiple different levels across the private sector, the professional sector of different sports as well. So I want to go back to day one of Mark Fitzgerald, how long ago that was, and how different you might have looked back then and all that. But what was the landscape like when you were working with athletes? And maybe let's focus on how did you actually get insights into how your athletes were doing every single week, how they were responding to the training you were doing? How did you just quantify progress?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a lot more murky waters than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I consider myself fortunate in that sense of how I learned and how I was thrust into, situations that maybe I wasn't prepared for, definitely wasn't prepared for. But for me, the biggest piece of that learning was, the first NHL athlete I work with is a guy named Adam Foote, who's now the coach of the Canucks.
Mm-hmm.
He's multiple Stanley Cup winner, Olympic gold medalist, he's won everything. And there's a reason for that. And being around him and working for him, training him, all those things was like a crash course in the room dynamics, and I think that played such a big role. It still does, because at the time there wasn't many metrics that we could pull from,
Mm-hmm.
right? There wasn't that subjective information that we could look at to like, I see this, but is it that? There was no backup to the intuition. And when I look at sport performance now, not to plug you guys, but your tools especially help me and back up my intuition as a coach. And 9.9 times out of 10, they're in alignment. Maybe 9 times out of 10. Probably me being wrong more than the the hardware or software. So I think, coming into coaching and working with a guy like Adam, who I was not, qualified to do initially, mainly because of my lack of experience, but it was a crash course in managing the room, and that's such a big thing. And, gentleman from the Cowboys was just talking about it, of how important those dynamics are and how to, where your role is as a performance coach, sports scientist, sport coach, medical person, it goes, whatever, across the spectrum of those roles, And, for me, being around Adam, alpha male, like he's a leader. He's that guy in the room he's dictating the room. You're just trying to, follow along.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to manage yourself in a way where your presence is where it should be. And it makes him sound whatever, but that's just the way it is. And especially back then, feeding off of that and realizing that he's going to, set the tone and the pace and the work ethic, which for the young guys that were with us at the time was massive, because he's a guy that had been through multiple wars in terms of sport and in terms of longevity. He wasn't the fastest, wasn't the biggest, but he played a certain way. He played with an edge, and there's a reason why he was on those Olympic teams and multiple Stanley Cups. And, he's, so again, I think a big part of that is just understanding the role of strength coach, understanding, how you communicate with athletes, how you get them to do some things that maybe they don't want to do, whether it's warm-ups or conditioning or whatever. That to me was a big, aha moment or moments of, this is what it's like to be a coach. And, you fast forward to now and it's like, I don't think a whole lot has changed. I think the dynamics are definitely different, but not really all that different. You're just dealing with, today's athlete, a little bit different than yesterday's athlete and all the mixture in between. And now you have these tools that can show you things that maybe you miss or things that you see coming. I think that's one of my favorite parts is, just watching the training effect live. Like we'll jump every week and we'll sprint every week. And that curve is, if it's a nice slow hockey stick, and that's great. And as soon as you start to see those first few down numbers, you're right close to where, and I'm speaking very generally, but you're right close to where you want to be, right? And I think now with teaching young coaches in our environment and interns and everything in between, that's such a great tool for them because, maybe they're thinking a certain way and now the tech is able to kind of back that up, which, I wish I had more of that as a young coach. But I also think it shaped how I coach, right? So I don't know if I don't think there's anything negative to it. It's just what it was.
Yeah. I think I remember Kelowna Hockey Fest this year. You're giving a presentation and you spoke about how the guys might have poor numbers, they might drop off, and you'll just cut the session for that day.
Yep.
And this is like you can talk to it better, but it's an off-season camp and the professional players are kind of confused.
Yeah.
Why can I not do this? So it goes to show that, having their back and that trust element is huge.
Well, Mike Boyle, right? They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And there's that line that you have to walk between, I say to our athletes all the time, especially ones that I work with, long-term rehab, I work for them. I don't work for the Dallas Stars or whatever team they play for. I work for you, right? And we're going to make decisions based on that, on you. And that doesn't mean that we're, making decisions against the team. We're just making decisions on what's best for you, right? And that, again, most of the time they're in coordination and they're, very on the same highway, but sometimes they're, take the second exit ramp and we'll eventually get back. You know what I mean? Like there's just nuance to it where, talking to Devin here from Utah, which was great to see him. It can be a tough environment. It can be a very tough environment depending on management and coaches and medical and that, the integration of that high performance, department, which is common now, but wasn't so common when I first started. So, just walking that line, right?
So decisions, you mentioned about making decisions there. Talk to me about maybe like your most recent professional role and the private role you have now. We still work with professional athletes, just in a different capacity. How do you go about making decisions based off, like, let's talk about Vald data?
Yeah, you know what? It's everybody wearing different logos as opposed to just wearing one. Like that's what it really comes down to. I don't think it has changed a whole lot. I do think that, more so than in previous years, the decision making, the athletes now have a bigger say, which I think is great. As a coach, I want that. I want them to have a say into or an opinion on, hey, this is where we're going next, and this is why. And I've always try to advocate for athletes in that sense from a coaching standpoint. Like, if you don't understand something and you want to understand it, ask the question.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have the answer, I'll find it, and I don't always have the answer, but it's building a great network of really smart people and people that, have those niche answers, or, it's great because I get to learn too. Right. And I think, now having the athlete way more engaged in their own data or whatever you want to call it, and helping them understand that, yeah, this is about you and how we go about this and how you want to be as a player, how you want to evolve as a player, includes this information, and you need to be a part of it. And some want it or want that, that part of it more than others, which is fine. And some really, really want it, which is not as fine. But I think it's great. I think that decision making becomes more communal, right? I'm not going to sit up at the front of the room and say, you have to do this. This is where you should be. No, like, here's your path. Here's, let's talk about where you think you could get to. What type of player are you? We had one of our veteran guys home over the Olympic break, and he was first round pick, highly touted, and his career has turned into more of a utility man, and third, fourth line win faceoffs and more simplistic. And he's fully, embraced it and lengthened his career because of it, and he could have fought it and said, no, I'm a goal scorer. I'm this, I'm that. No, it's the best league in the world. Like, if you don't evolve with what they're asking you or what they're asking of you as a player, you're going to be left out. And it's interesting just to watch that evolution. And I think the same way as, in coaching, like, I'm evolving as a coach. I'm constantly evolving as a coach. If I'm not, I'm in trouble, and I'm going to miss things, and I'm going to miss opportunities to help people, to help athletes. Right. So
Sure.
I think going back, the decision-making becomes more input, and it becomes input from people that maybe didn't have as much before, which I think, now that we have this type of input, it just allows for much better decisions.
So I've met Bryce.
Yeah.
You're the tech guy, the data guy, whatever we want to call him.
Okay.
But talk to me about communicating with athletes, and because I know Bryce is a part of that. I know you're a part of that as well. And there's obviously the head coach, the sports scientist relationship.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that with the athletes?
Well, I think, number one, Bryce is special in a way that he's come into our environment. He came in an intern role. He came in kind of the lowest level, I guess you could say. And he's always carried himself in a way that, when I first met him and started interacting with him, I'm like, okay, he's not going anywhere. In terms of, like, I'm not going to let him go anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm going to be working for him someday. Just that work ethic and humble, and, he's been around hockey. So, he started to really pay attention to how, just like what I talked about before, where he fits in and when his voice should be louder and when it shouldn't be. And, just like I do. And our relationship now is I trust him immensely. If I'm doing something, he's doing it too. Right. And I mean that in the most respectful way possible. And we joke about it, obviously, because personality wise, but he's getting married this summer. Like, he's becoming a close family friend, and his fiance, who's a teacher who teaches some of my kids. Anyways, that's on the personal side, but that relationship now is one of complete trust. Number one, he understands where our thought process on training and what we're looking to do with the athletes and how we want to communicate with them. He's put together his own, hey, what do you think of this type, and it's like, wow, we have this graph that we kind of work off of all summer that he's developed. And it's like, okay, like, and we can show this to people and go, here's where you are, here's where we want to get you to, and this is why, and these are the parameters. And I said to him early on, he was doing his, finishing his schooling, and he's like, I think I'm going to do my master's. I said, yeah, I mean, you're not married yet, no kids, no, like, just do it now. And now he's in his second year of his PhD. And it was the same conversation. I'm like, just keep going, man. Like, just keep going.
Mhm.
He's like, and Bryce, he's 5'10", a $150 at most. And he asked me about, just career path stuff. And I said, look, I don't think strength coach is in your future. Although, and I was joking, obviously, but he knew that. And he also said at the same time, he still coaches. He still coaches, right? And it's like, again, that speaks to his humility. But I said, where I would point myself if I was you is sports science. And this was years ago. I go, look at all these companies. You guys were one of them that are pushing into this field, that are creating new tools, that are really pushing the boundaries on data collection, data management, just different modalities, VBT, like all this stuff that has just exploded in the last 5 to 10 years. And I said, I'm not that person. I know what I'm good at. It's not that. But I also know that I'm going to need those tools, and those tools are going to be integrated into everything I do. I said, so in my opinion, you having a really good understanding of that and being able to filter, good versus bad, or high return versus low return is going to be invaluable. And I said, on the research side, there's you're in the perfect spot for it. You're in the perfect spot. And, he's done a phenomenal job of just taking that and running with it. And, we've done some really cool research with some different companies, you guys included. And it pushes me, and it pushes our group, and all of our athletes know Bryce's role. They respect the role. They are going to him before they would come to me, but they're going right to him now. And it's so cool to see, because that's what I want, right? Because I want to stay with what I'm doing. And, I'm driving the bus on the business with my partner, Travis, and, we have our roles and Bryce has his. And now I'm pushing Bryce to start to create his team, right? Because we have such a strong partnership with our UBCO, or local university, interns, and we have 8 interns right now. It's phenomenal. And he's, starting to lead those groups. And I said, I'm going to keep pushing you to lead, because it's the best way to learn,
Sure.
And so, yeah, I know, long-winded, sorry, but that it's such a vital piece of it. And he's really built out a big piece of our business around, what makes it complete. Orca was talking about it today, Taylor, talked about that, all those pieces integrating with each other, and he was bang on. That's how that sport performance world should look, in my opinion. And it's not that different from the professional team environment either, and kind of what I'm going to talk about today. Not on the data side necessarily, but just on that, the entire process, the entire decision-making process, and the roles within that, and how those things come to be. And Bryce has given us that.
For sure. Yeah, and that's Bryce Twyble. I forgot to introduce him properly, but
I don't know his Instagram handle, but I'm sure you can find him.
BT Sports Science.
Oh, there you go.
I remember that. But awesome. So I always end with a bit of it's not really a curveball, but it's more of an open-ended question. So what's next for our industry in the next 5 years? And let me just put a constraint on that. You can't use those 2 letters. You can't use AI.
It's funny, and I kind of figured you were going to say that. And I keep going back to it, and I use that thing a lot, and it's phenomenal. It is phenomenal, but it is not taking my job, and it is not taking most jobs. If anything, it's going to make our jobs a hell of a lot better. Maybe there's certain sectors, but that'll all sort itself out, in my opinion. What I do know is that our profession, our field, and all the, silos within it are going to become even more important. And I don't think there's many other industries that have the trajectory of health and wellness. And that is a big, capture. But, I did a presentation not that long ago for a executive health type of thing with the company that I work for. And it was all about the health and wellness industry, the multi-trillion-dollar health and wellness industry. Our industry is only doing this. It is only going up. And I think finding your, you call it a niche or role or whatever you want to call it within that is going to become even more important. For me, I love working with athletes. It's challenging. I tend to do a lot more long-term rehab now, and teams are just kind of dropping people off in Kelowna, and we have such a great team there, Bryce included, and therapists and what have you, that it makes it easy, right? But I think that, and even stuff like this, conferences, they're going to become more important again and I think they're going to be smaller, and I think they're going to be a little more concise, just like what you guys are doing. And you're going to want to be here. You're going to want to be around people. I've done nothing but talk all morning to people that either I know from the industry, or I was talking to Annie from University of Utah. What an incredible presentation, right? And she's obviously a lot younger than me, but that these coaches are so bright, and they're going to be pushing our field continuously. So I think it's just I'm excited for it. If you can't tell, I think only up and only opportunity for people who are willing to put in the work and willing to be good at what they do.
For sure. And I do think AI it's always going to be there, but
of course
it's going to help us if you know how to use it the right way.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, I don't think I said this before, and some people may take it as arrogance, but I'm the best at what I do because I know what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you buy a program from me, an online program, I don't know, is it going to be good? I hope so, but
who knows?
It's not going to be, it's not going to blow your brains out. Like I know people in my field who I buy programs from who are brilliant because I know that. I'm not one of those guys. My value is me in the room with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what I've come to learn. And is my program? Yeah, it's fine. But if I go to Tim Caron, I'm going to buy programs from him. He's Rain Man in terms of that. Ben Prentice, gross. But me, what I do is, you want me in the room with you. I want to look at everything that you do. I want to watch. I want to learn about you. I want to create a relationship with you. That's my value. And I think that's not going anywhere. Nobody can replace that. Just like they can't replace you, right? Like and I think I wish more people would kind of lean into that a little bit more, no matter what you do, and there's so many people that have said probably similar things, but just love what you do and find, whether it's joy or whatever word you want to use. I like I love what I do for work. Is there parts of it that I don't love? Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up at 3 a.m. today and I'm on a 2-hour time swing and whatever, but I'm so energized to be here and to speak because this is part of what I do and I love it. And it's, I hope that comes across. It probably will.
Yeah, it sure does.
You know what I mean? Like it's that you can't have a robot that will do the same thing, unless, I don't know, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, I want to see that robot if we have that.
Yeah, but seriously.
Cool. Well, Mark, if people want to reach out to you off the back of this, what's the best way to do that? Is it Instagram? Is it email?
Yeah, either one is fine. At Fitzgerald ETS on the socials, and that's probably the easiest way. I love, I just connected with a couple of people recently, young coaches that are looking for advice. I love it. It's I love helping those people any way that I possibly can, getting people jobs or helping them get jobs. And because so many people help me, right? And that's what you do in this field. You pass it on and you support that next kind of group of, I'm still going, but it's,
you're fresh.
Yeah. You try to, help grow the field, right?
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to your presentation in probably 30 minutes or so.
Love it.
So we'll get you down there. We'll get you hyped up. And thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, anytime, man. Thanks for having me.